summit in Alaska with no ceasefire agreement and no clear path to peace in Ukraine. Both leaders insisted that progress was made, but neither offered any details. Trump, speaking to reporters after the nearly 3-hour meeting, said, "We didn't get there," and repeated his line that there's no deal until there's a deal. He nevertheless claimed the talks were productive, calling them a 10 out of 10 and saying that he believed a deal was still possible. Putin struck a similarly optimistic tone, declaring he was sincerely interested in ending the conflict, but provided no roadmap for how that would happen. Both leaders, surprised, observed by delivering statements without taking any questions from any journalists. Their delegations also left the room immediately afterwards, leaving many outstanding issues unanswered. In a Fox News interview recorded just after the summit, Trump floated the possibility of a prisoner swap, saying he had been presented with a list of thousands of names. He added that land swaps and territorial arrangements had also been discussed, calling the meeting with Putin very warm and suggesting they were pretty close to a deal. Yet Trump also stressed that any agreement would depend on Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, who was not invited to the summit. Trump urged him to make a deal while saying future talks would need to include both Putin and Zelensky, along with European partners. Reaction has been mixed. Former US Ambassador to NATO Douglas Lutte called the outcome a gain for Putin, who secured the prestige of sharing the stage with the American president, while Trump walked away with zero. Analysts say the lack of substance leaves the war's future uncertain, with Kyiv still silent and no new steps announced to halt the fighting. The red carpet greeting in Anchorage, complete with 2 handshakes, a motorcade ride in Trump's limousine, and a backdrop of reading "Pursue Peace," may have provided drama, but for now, the substance remains elusive and the war in Ukraine rages on. We are now... Okay, we have some of the biggest statements that the leaders have made post the historic summit.
We really made some great progress today. I've always had a fantastic relationship with President Putin, with Vladimir. We had many tough meetings, good meetings. We were interfered with by the Russia. An extremely productive meeting, and many points were agreed to. There are just a very few that are left. Some are not that significant. One is probably the most significant, but we have a very good chance of getting there. We didn't get there, but we have a very good chance of getting there. I would like to thank President Putin and his entire team, who I know in many cases.
Как вы хорошо знаете, понимаете, одним из центральных вопросов стала ситуация вокруг Украины. Мы видим стремление администрации США и лично президента Трампа содействовать разрешению украинского конфликта. Его желание вникнуть в суть и понять его истоки. Я не раз говорил, что для России события на Украине связаны с фундаментальными угрозами нашей национальной безопасности. Более того, мы всегда считали и считаем украинский народ, я говорил об этом неоднократно, братским, как это ни странно прозвучит в сегодняшних условиях. У нас одни корни, и все происходящее для нас – это трагедия и тяжелая боль. Поэтому наша страна искренне заинтересована в том, чтобы положить этому конец. При этом мы убеждены, что чтобы украинское урегулирование носило устойчивый и долгосрочный характер, должны быть устранены все первопричины кризиса, о которых говорили неоднократно. Обеспечен учет всех законных озабоченностей России, восстановлен справедливый баланс в сфере безопасности в Европе и в мире в целом. Я согласен с президентом Трампом, он сегодня говорил об этом, что, безусловно, должна быть обеспечена и безопасность Украины. Конечно, мы готовы над этим работать. Хочется надеяться, что достигнутое нами понимание позволит приблизиться к той цели и откроет дорогу к миру на Украине. Мы рассчитываем, что в Киеве и европейских столицах вас примут все это в конструктивном ключе и не станут чинить никаких препятствий. Не будут предпринимать попыток за счет провокаций или закулисных интриг сорвать намечающийся прогресс. Я хотел бы поблагодарить господина Трампа за совместную работу, за доброжелательный и доверительный тон беседы. Главное, что с обеих сторон был настрой на результат. Мы видим, что президент США имеет четкое представление о том, чего хочет добиться, искренне заботится о процветании своей страны и в то же время проявляет понимание наличия в России своих национальных интересов. Рассчитывает, что сегодняшние договоренности станут опорной точкой не только для решения украинской проблемы, но и положат начало восстановлению деловых, прагматичных отношений между России и США, что президент США имеет четкое представление о том, чего хочет добиться, искренне заботится о процветании своей страны и в то же время проявляет понимание наличия в России своих национальных интересов. Рассчитывает, что сегодняшние договоренности станут опорной точкой не только для решения украинской проблемы, но и положат начало восстановлению деловых, прагматичных отношений между Россией и США. Сегодня мы слышим, когда президент Трамп говорит, что если бы я был президентом, то войны бы не было. Я думаю, что так бы на самом деле и случилось. Я подтверждаю это, потому что в целом у нас с президентом Трампом наладился очень хороший деловой и доверительный контакт, и у меня есть все основания полагать, что, двигаясь по этому пути, мы можем дойти и чем быстрее, тем лучше, до завершения конфликта на Украине. Очевидно, что российско-американское деловое и инвестиционное партнерство имеет огромный потенциал. России и США есть что предложить друг другу в торговле, энергетике, цифровой сфере, высоких технологиях и освоении космоса. Актуальным видится и взаимодействие в Арктике, возобновление межрегиональных контактов, в том числе между нашим Дальним Востоком и американским Западным побережьем.
Yes, you just heard from both President Donald Trump and President Vladimir Putin. We're now going to dive into a discussion on the outcomes of the summit that the whole world was watching. For this discussion, we're joined by Dr. Satoru Nagao. He's a fellow at the Hudson Institute. He joins us live from Tokyo, Japan. We're also joined by Shruti Dasgupta. She's an international affairs expert. She joins us live from New Delhi. And we're also joined by retired Major General Dr. Rajan Kochhar. He's a senior strategic and defense expert. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us on this discussion. Let's dive straight in. Dr. Nagao, I wanted to start with you first. There's been widespread criticism about the outcomes of this summit. Donald Trump said that he wanted a ceasefire. However, Putin has been granted to continue his war in Ukraine. He also got to share the stage and have a very grand meeting, a ride in the president's limousine with Donald Trump. Did this summit change the trajectory for the Ukraine war at all, do you think, Dr. Nagao?
It is unclear whether this is a successful meeting or a failure to seek the ceasefire in Ukraine just now. Because President Trump received some suggestion from Putin and he asked President Zelensky or NATO leaders. So that's why after the reaction from them, it will be clear the success or not. So that's why just now I cannot say this is a success or this is a failure. And but view from the condition, there is no ceasefire agreement. There is, even if about the next meeting, there is no promise to hold. So view from this, there is no agreement means that there is no achievement. But at the same time, President Trump also said just now he do not need to impose a secondary sanction against Russia. Second, which will impose the country who import products from Russia. So that's why this means that President Trump think that they do not need to make more pressure to Russia just now. This means that this negotiation is still ongoing, And the results we cannot say clearly just now. So that's why I'm waiting the response from the NATO side and Ukraine side. That is my current situation in my analysis. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Nagawa. We're also joined by Shruti Dasgupta. Shruti, your thoughts on the outcome of this summit? Vladimir Putin has got to continue his war in Ukraine despite the strong rhetoric from Donald Trump saying that he would be very angry if a ceasefire was not announced today. However, all smiles during their press conference and positive words and hopes of a meeting soon. Your thoughts, Shruti?
Greetings, Thomas. I believe that you have very precisely encapsulated. There were just old smiles and no words. There was nothing actually achieved. But for me, the irony was that they did say that they discussed business and trade and relation and cooperation amongst the peace talks. So this is kind of like the dual face of USA being exposed, because they are sanctioning nations on the basis of the fact that they are doing business with Russia during the Ukraine war. So basically it unmasks USA as well as NATO when they say that, okay, peace talk can be used to negotiate trade. One of my takeaways is that. The other one is that although both of them were flexing in their own personal ways, there is definitely a sense of clarity that must have been delivered to Trump, because although he was all bluster about it, that there's a 25% chance that it will fail, and then he went ahead with the fact that, I'll impose secondary sanctions, but he didn't, and he wanted immediate ceasefire, and now probably he came back better educated about the complexities of the situation, where he just cannot raise the white flag on behalf of the competing nations or the conflicting nations. And so he's probably understood that this is a deeper conflict. But I will give him this point that Putin came out and said that this particular war could have been avoided had Trump had been the president of USA in 2022, which was basically saying that the spring peace deal that was signed between Russia and Ukraine, that Ukraine was encouraged by Boris Johnson and other NATO allies to walk away from, that particular peace deal would have held, and the world would not have witnessed 3 years of war and destruction and loss of human life. So Putin has made his stance very clear. He's laid out the primary causes of the war. He's shown Trump his hard lines, that these probably are the reasons why I will not sign a blanket peace deal. You need to negotiate on the finer nuances of why this conflict has become such a big one, where more than one nations are involved physically, monetarily, militarily.
Yes, Shruti, thank you very much for your insight. Major General Kochar joins us here on the program. Thank you very much for joining us, Major General. Does Putin gain here from walking away and continuing his war, and also appearing on equal footing with Trump in his press conference and also this meeting?
Thank you, Thomas, for inviting me to this discussion. Definitely, Putin has gained substantially at the world stage. His stature has gone up after this meeting. And it's very, very clear this carrot and stick policy of Donald Trump does not work with Putin. You can't impose conditions before you start a negotiation. And I think Trump had to backtrack on that. And that is why there wasn't any rhetoric or any strong words used after these talks have failed. And it is very, very clear. You have to understand this was diplomatically symbolic talks, but substantially hollow, because there were no outcomes. And frankly speaking, I was not expecting also any tangible outcome without involvement of Ukraine. Today morning, I was just reading the statements made by Zelensky, because Zelensky has been maintaining, or he has been condemning any talk between Russia and the US without involvement of Ukraine. The two most important issues, or three most important issues which will ensure ceasefire, I feel. First is the issue of land which has been captured by Russia, because Ukraine is insisting that they will not cede any inch of land. Today we are aware 19% of Ukraine is captured by Russia. As a matter of fact, in the last 3 months, the Russian offensive has been very, very strong, and almost 1,500 square kilometers of area has been captured. A second important aspect is demilitarization of this area. Who is going to be a part of that demilitarization force? Because Russia does not accept any European Union troops to be positioned in this area. A third important aspect is about prisoners and the children who have been abducted, because Ukraine has been insisting on this, that we would like to go ahead with this part first and then come to the other parts of the ceasefire. And one important aspect I would like to bring to your show is that any kind of a ceasefire, there has to be a trust factor between the two sides. See, why Gaza and in Gaza, Hamas and Israel are not coming to a ceasefire is the lack of trust. So there has to be certain amount of security guarantees coming through, and NATO membership is certainly off the table. So there are many. Trump says only one odd issue is left to be resolved. I feel there are a number of issues which are left to be resolved, and Trump has not succeeded tangibly, I would say. But my concluding remark is that I see a silver lining, in the sense that Trump and Putin have got together. There is going to be a thaw in the relations now, because this kind of distancing between Russia and US was not good for the world. And I think in the larger context, if we look at it, if we don't look at it only from the Ukraine point of view, I think in the larger context, I think this is a step forward.
Yes, thank you very much, Major General. Dr. Nagao, I wanted to come back to you. Your thoughts on Donald Trump's statements that this summit opens the door to a trilateral summit with the possible inclusion of Ukraine, President Volodymyr Zelensky, and also European powers, those people who Donald Trump has been so critical of in the past. Is this an important development?
Yes, and what President Trump tried to do is logical, because without agreement with Europe, it is impossible to hold the ceasefire. So that's why this is needed. But at the same time, viewed from Russian side, it looks like Russia want to divide the US and Europe, or US and Ukraine, to win the war. And President Putin's stance is Ukraine is not a country, and the leader is not the national level. So, such kind of logic exists in Russia, even if other countries admit Ukraine as a country. So that's why if Putin meets Zelensky, this is not equal Russian side believe. So that's why the Russians, if President Trump want to seek the trilateral meeting, the next as the second meeting of this series, it relies on the Russia's attitude. That is the current situation, and so it is a very tough job, I believe.
Yes, indeed, Dr. Nagao. Shruti, I want to bring you back in here. When Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin were addressing international press, they were standing in front of a wall that said "Pursuing Peace." Vladimir Putin also reiterated that he has sincere interest in pursuing this peace. However, in the backdrop of this, we saw escalating conflicts going on in the east of Ukraine. Is Putin's sincere interest in peace credible, or is it tactical positioning?
Pursuing peace is the theme that they're probably going to present throughout any of the meetings held under the series of pursuing a ceasefire, bringing an end to the war. So we'll see that particular backdrop show up much more often. Beyond that, it is not just that the Ukraine side was attacked. Ukraine also attacked a Russian side, and right into the Caspian Sea with a long-range drone attack, where they sank a ship where they suspected of carrying supply ship that was suspected of carrying drone parts or something like that. So basically, the aggressions in Europe continue. Both the countries have exchanged fire while the peace talks were supposed to be happening, and this basically shows exactly what Trump said, that there's no deal until unless there's a deal, until unless the paper is inked by the nations that are actually conflicting. There is going to be continued aggression across the world. This is not only Zelensky posturing, this is also Europe posturing. They are showing that they are ready to supply Ukraine with whatever fuel, ammunition, and other necessities that are there for Ukraine to continue the war if an unequal peace is sought. So as long as, which again, Trump tried to avoid using this word, the word divvy up, but this is exactly what is going to happen to Ukraine soon if peace is sought through this particular method. I don't think NATO beyond USA has any significance. So if US is happy with the terms that comes through, the NATO nations will fall in line and Ukraine will be pushed onto the table to sign the deal. So Putin is pursuing peace, but peace on his terms, and Trump is pursuing peace on his business terms. So these are the things that we need to be very clear of. This is a deal that USA is looking for, critical minerals and oil being at the heart of it, and NATO posturing at the secondary level. So when Trump goes to a peace table, he's asking for better resources for himself and his nation. And if this is something that Putin is able to supply, Trump will pursue peace even at the cost of Ukrainian lives.
Yes, thank you, Shruti. To wrap this hour up, Major General, I wanted to finish with you. Many people are saying this is a huge win for Putin, given his appeared equal stance with the American president. Is this the reintroduction of Moscow back onto the global stage?
Thomas, I think it'll be too early to make the statement about introduction of Moscow at the global stage, because there are many geopolitical realignments which are taking place today. Russia, China, Iran, and these countries are getting, the North Korea also has to be in the equation. One important aspect I would like to bring out to this discussion is that Putin is not ready for ceasefire. You see, as a military analyst, I can tell you, Putin has not reached the end state of what he would call as a culmination of this war, because he is still fighting in two major towns in the southeast Donetsk, and unless he gets hold of these two towns, he is not going to be able to sustain the capture of the entire Donetsk. Luhansk, to a great extent, Putin or the Russians have captured that. They've installed their own federation also there. Their mayor has been installed, governance is going on there. But Donetsk area is still not fully captured. A second important aspect is Kursk area. If you remember, in Kursk, the Ukrainian offensive, they were able to take large chunks of that territory, and so far, Russian forces have been only able to gain 89% of it. Still 11% is in the hands of Ukraine. So if you call a ceasefire at this stage, what is going to happen to the balance of Kursk? What is going to happen to the balance of Donetsk? Because Putin is not going to accept anything unless he secures these entire areas for Russia, and he wants a land bridge between Donbass and Crimea to be established before he signs on that piece of paper which is called a deal. So I think Putin is buying time. He has started these negotiations because he is also under a tremendous pressure from the US as far as sanctions are concerned, because Russian economy is also suffering, and Putin also knows that. So I think I would actually conclude my argument by saying that Putin is buying time. He is not yet ready for the ceasefire, and he is going to escalate this offensive only. Yesterday itself, we actually saw the escalation has already started. He is going to escalate the offensive, and he does not have time because he knows it's a matter of months before a ceasefire can be arrived at.
Yes, thank you very much, Major General Kochar, for joining us here on the program. I also want to say thank you to Dr. Satura Nagao and Shruti Dasgupta for joining us in that discussion. Well, this hour, that is all that we have time for, but we will continue to bring you more news updates from around the world. Thank you for joining us.